Hi guys, happy Wednesday. I'm back for Read Aloud. Let's continue with Spring According to Humphrey. We're kind of in the middle of chapter 2, and so here we go. My classmates and I spent a lot of time looking for signs of spring, but we didn't come up with much. My mom ordered seeds for her garden, Felipe said one day, but she can't plant them yet. I'd still say that was a sign of spring, Mrs. Brisbane said. March was a funny month. We'd have sunshine and warmer weather for a few days. Then suddenly it would rain and turn cold and gloomy. Og, have you seen one single sign of spring yet? I asked after 2 weeks of feeling frustrated. He replied with a very bored-sounding boing. Me either, I said. My friends were as frustrated as I was. You'd think the leaves would be budding, Holly complained. Not now, Nicole sighed. You'd think the flowers would be blooming. Where are the robins? Rosie wondered. Mrs. Brisbane smiled. They'll be here soon. The first day of spring is coming up. Small Paul raised his hand. I was reading up on the average temperatures for March here, and this is completely normal. There were several loud groans. It's not my fault, Paul said. It's a scientific fact. We don't blame you, Paul, Rolling Rosie said. But why does science have to be so scientific? At least she made everybody laugh. A few days before the first day of spring, it snowed. Again. This is not fair, Harry groaned. Daniel agreed. At least it could have snowed enough for them to call off school. Mrs. Brisbane went on to talk about math problems, and I gazed out at the snow. It wasn't very deep, and there were patches of brown showing through. White and brown, brown and white and purple? Look, I squeaked, look! I knew that the purple thing could be a wrapper from somebody's lunch, or anything someone might have dropped. I climbed to the tippy top of my cage for a better look. Humphrey seems excited, Mrs. Brisbane said, hurrying to the table. Is something wrong? No, I squeaked. It's a sign. She didn't understand me, of course, but Og joined in with a boing, boing. They're looking outside, our teacher said. But what are they looking at? The students rushed to the window to look. Og and I continued to make a lot of noise. It's purple! It's spring, I squeaked. Boing, 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 Og added. Rosie leaned forward in her wheelchair and pressed her nose against the window. Look, she pointed. It's a purple flower coming through the snow. The class buzzed with excitement. Where? Thomas asked. Yeah, where? Sophie said. I see it. Mrs. Brisbane pointed too. Over there, near the base of the tall tree. I heard lots of oohs and ahs. I think we should go out and see for ourselves, Mrs. Brisbane said. Yes, we should, I squeaked. It seemed to take them forever to put on coats and hats, boots and gloves, and then tramp outside to see the flower. My friends were excited, and so was I, until I realized that Og and I weren't going outside with them. The cold isn't good for either one of us. I knew that, but I couldn't help but wish that I could put on a coat and hat and boots and gloves and join them. Og and I silently stared out the window until we saw Mrs. Brisbane lead my friends to the little spot of purple. Everyone crouched down to stare at the purple bloom. Mrs. Brisbane snapped a photo, and then she did something wonderful. She looked right up at our window and waved. I don't think she could see me, but I waved back. Boing! Og twanged. Boing, boing! I love Mrs. Brisbane, and at that moment I knew that she loved me, and Og too, of course. When my friends returned to room 26, their cheeks were rosy and their eyes sparkled with excitement. What did you call that flower, Mrs. Brisbane? Tell the truth, Thomas asked. I believe it was a crocus, she said. Let's look it up. Once the gloves and hats and boots and scarves were off, Mrs. Brisbane opened a big book and turned page after page. Here, she said, what do you think? My friends all leaned in around her desk where she had opened the book. I wish I could see it, I told Og. Boing, boing, he replied. It's definitely a crocus, Helpful Holly said. And to think, it poked its little head up through the snow. The door to room 26 swung open and in walked the most important person at Longfellow School, our principal, Mr. Morales. I saw you all tramping through the snow, he said. I wondered what you were all looking at. He was smiling, so I knew he wasn't upset. There's a purple crocus in the snow, Stop Talking Sophie said. It's the first sign of spring and it was beautiful. I'll show you. She led Mr. Morales to the window and pointed. It's that little bit of purple near the tree. Mrs. Brisbane was behind us. Humphrey and Og seemed to spot it first, she said. Because they were very wise and observant, Mr. Morales said. Thank you, I squeaked. Boing, Og said. Then I heard voices chanting, It's spring, it's spring, it's such a wonderful thing. I looked over and saw Rosie, Holly, Nicole, and Kelsey joining hands and repeating, It's spring, it's such a wonderful thing. Mr. Morales smiled and said, I agree. I sit in my office and work at my desk and talk on my phone, and sometimes I never even look out the window. Thank you for showing me a wonderful thing. It's funny how a little purple flower in the snow can make people so happy. Hamsters and frogs, too. After Mr. Morales left, my classmates started writing about the first sign of spring. Mrs. Brisbane wrote crocus on the board. She also passed around purple crayons for my friends to share. They were very, very, very quiet until they left for lunch. While they were gone, I took out my notebook. I didn't have a purple crayon, but I think I did a pretty good job of drawing a crocus without one. Humphrey's Spring Things. It almost took forever to see a sign of spring, but now that it has happened, it's such a thrilling thing. That's the end of chapter 2. We're going to stop there for today. I hope that you've been able to be outside, finding lots of signs of spring. I know today is a beautifully sunny day, and I hope you have a great one. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.